There are a few technologies or magics that are fundamental to our understanding of a world. How advanced it is, what sort of plots can even realistically happen there. Most of these developments boil down to moving things faster. From the advent of the sling, bullets propelled by explosive force, near instantaneous access to information around the world, or whether we're looking at faster than light travel. Moving things fast is one of those major progress milestones in the developmental reality of a world. Teleportation encompasses all of these. It's something of a developmental golden goose. It can be an offensive or a defensive tool, a way to deliver people, information, or goods from place to place near instantly. It supercharges every aspect of how a world functions. But this is a bit of a double-edged sword for creatives. Once you've introduced teleportation as an option, mundane movement seems laughable or impractical or useless in comparison. Thankfully, I'm here today to give you a cheat sheet, a guide as to what levels of teleportation your world can handle, so that the worlds you enjoy, invent, or inhabit can make a bit more sense. This all stems from a conversation on my YouTube membership private Discord. You can join my YouTube membership program. Don't right now, mostly because you might have noticed videos are becoming a little less fast than usual. Not every week. That will continue for the next month or so for a reason that I will explain at the end of this video. But after that, content's back to normal, and please do consider joining. While discussing different types of teleportation, one of my members posited a teleportation typology, a broad assessment of the kinds of teleportation method that exist. It's these methods, these broad types of teleportation, that I'm going to be analysing today in terms of how they impact a world. Because fundamentally there are only 4 types of teleportation. They are portals, translocation, matter transmission, and shortcutting, and each hold massively different implications if you allow them to exist within a world. And the scope of the teleportation possible, the perhaps sometimes literal size of the portal, makes a huge difference too. I want to begin with the most imminently possible type of teleportation to exist in our world at the moment, matter transmission. Well, it's hard to say that this is definitely closer to future humans than say, shortcutting, but stick with me, okay? Matter transmission is our classic Star Trek transmat system. In most presentations, it requires external technology or influence to function, as the whole point is to perfectly capture, disassemble, and then reassemble matter in a brand new place. It stands to reason that it's quite difficult to do that to yourself, as for the period of disassembly you cease to exist, and therefore lose, potentially, the agency to reassemble. In theory, this should allow for an uninterrupted, continuous transfer of a person's entire form to a new place, either at the speed the disassembled bits can be fired, or the speed at which a printer can produce a new you. This type of matter transmission has some major flaws, not least philosophically. Specifically, the question if a perfect copy of a person is in fact a continuity of consciousness, or a clone who believes itself to have a continuity of experience, and if that distinction even actually matters. For me, from my perspective, from my philosophical perspective, I would prefer my personal perspective to continue as long as I can allow it to continue. And although a perfect cloned copy of me and my current mental state would be happy to exist and continue existing, and might be fine as having skipped a really long journey, the disassembly process would, I believe, end my personal participation in existence from the perspective that I am currently living. Sorry for the tangent, but I needed to get that out there. No, the main problem with matter transmission is that transporting people and things is a sideshow to this type of technology or magic. Think of it this way. If you have matter transmission technology or magic, you must be able to in some way perfectly capture down to the most minute detail a copy of a person, a full scan of a person, a creature, an object, whatever, including the complexity of brains and current thoughts. And you must also have the technology or magic to reconstruct those impossibly complex and detailed things such as minds in a brand new place out of raw materials, from either the right atoms or the right sort of magical essence. Matter transmission is essentially functionally perfect in the moment cloning. It's also capable of completely reformatting materials, as long as the base materials are there, magical or otherwise, and completely analysing and disassembling any object. Figure out all of the constituent metamaterials of a thing, be they magical, elemental or atomic, put them in one end of your machine and reassemble it into the thing that you would like, be that food, water or complex matter from the most basic building blocks of life. The point is, any society that can just snap their fingers and materialize stuff out of the raw building blocks of the universe, it is going to be way past the need to use their transmat machines for sending a person across the world or across the planets. Hell, most matter transmission is just a handicapped ethical version of perfect atomic cloning, just to make sure that you're not accidentally duplicating people across 2 points in space. You have to destroy the original for ethical reasons. Using this technology for teleportation, disassembling and reassembling a creature across the cosmos is probably the least effective use of matter transmission technology. Because this technology that we've discussed to disassemble, reassemble from basics is just so versatile. You would really struggle to drop this on any world that isn't sort of post-scarcity, unless it was the sole secret power of a particular individual or corporation who would themselves be incredibly wasteful and arrogant and probably quite stupid not to use SegNet technology for duplication rather than transportation. Matter transmission is almost by its nature a science fiction prospect, rooted in a future that might be coming down the line someday. Shortcutting is the other potential near-future science fiction method I alluded to earlier. It is itself a hybrid of translocation and portals, so it's a little weird to discuss it before translocation or portals, but I do want to really highlight just how opposed shortcutting is to matter transmission. Shortcutting is any teleportation method that reduces the travel distance by passing through some other dimension. Think Minecraft, wherein you can use the Nether's compressed dimensions to travel further in the overworld once you pop out of the Nether again. Or using wormholes to compress and fold space so that travelling through a short distance means you have travelled across the entire vast breadth of the cosmos. What disappoints me about the media presentation of shortcutting as a teleportation form is, well, it doesn't exist. Yes, there are wormholes and hyperspace jumps in many forms of science fiction, but this power, material travel using dimensional folding, is just not well represented outside of science fiction, despite the fact that, unlike matter transmission, it doesn't necessitate any massive sort of tech level, nor dictate anything really about a setting other than the fact that space can fold, or that there's another dimension, either a fourth dimension, a transit plane, an ethereal realm in which one can move faster. One of those things does tend to at least be true in a lot of speculative fictional worlds. So where are all of our fantasy shortcutters? Probably the most famous user of this power is Nightcrawler, but the tragedy is most fans and some versions of Nightcrawler themselves don't know that he's even shortcutting. His teleportations take him to the Brimstone dimension. I know. Which he travels through and then reappears, having teleported. Hence the sulfuric bamfs that we all know and love. I think that there's an analogous use of this power in the Wheel of Time, if I'm not mistaken, called skimming, but it just isn't the staple in fantasy media that shortcutting could be. Especially considering it actually adds quite a bit to have a spatial or a planar law in a setting, and again, doesn't have any other massive implications. I mean, I say that, like any teleportation power, it's still going to affect worldwide logistics if it's in any way reliable or numerous enough as a power. Shortcutters would be prized for instantaneous goods or information transference, but the very nature of shortcutting gives the power a wonderful counterbalance to overuse. Make the shortcut dangerous. If your teleporter starts donning armor or gets into a battle stance or some sort of armored vehicle before they begin their teleportation, before they prepare for their jaunt around the world, you add theming, stakes, and a reason that this power hasn't taken over every aspect of your world's logistical chain. We need more shortcutting outside of wormholes and hyperspace. Outside of science fiction, genuinely. Because let's be honest, a wormhole is just a portal with a fancy explanation, which is the big weakness of shortcutting. From the outside, it looks just like you're translocating or you're portaling. Unless you really get into the weeds or look from the point of view of the teleporter themselves, it really doesn't matter. Just like it really doesn't matter, unless the story is predicated on that fact or is addressing that fact, that Nightcrawler teleports through the Brimstone dimension, or that Cyclops' laser eyes aren't lasers, but beams of kinetic force emanating from his eyes, which are themselves portals to a dimension of pure concussive force. I know, functionally, 99% of the time, it's translocation and it's laser eyes. But speaking as we are already of portals, we should really address my favourite method of teleportation next. Portals, like matter transmission, they often require external machinery or external infrastructure to be themselves maintained. This means they often persist in a world in some capacity, either to be ripped open again when the prophesied time comes. They are less likely to be instantaneously disappearing products of a personal power. Now that's not universal. There are many portalers across fiction with a personal portal power, usually manifesting as a sort of door, either the classic human-sized rectangle or oval, almost always on a two-dimensional plane. The existence of a personal portaler in a world has a similar sort of level of influence on the tech level and expectations of a world as a personal shortcutter, for instance. You make some tasks easier, the sharing of information, delivering tactics, assassination, or business, they become much more powerful and instant. But it's a permanent or semi-permanent portal that really escalates things, setting tech level development-wise. Persistent portals, much like a good wormhole, will warp everything around them. Logistics, locations of cities, potential trade routes, they're all going to change as soon as a persistent portal exists in a world. And it's not even necessary for your portal to be big enough to have a truck go through it. Any basic construction line or just a conveyor belt can see the delivery of tons of stuff within a day. Even if your portal is too small for a person, you can send things through it en masse. Persistent portals, though, they also create massive strategic weaknesses that must be compensated for. There are vanishingly few historic nations or trade organisations who would willingly pursue a permanent portal link between two places with no reservations at all. Even if it was with their closest allies, their bosom buddies forever. It still is a bit of a paused thought to think that someone could send something you don't want through there immediately. Stargate is probably the best practical exploration of the countermeasures and risks involved when dealing with persistent portals. And even though it's science fiction, the lessons and practicalities of Stargate travel should serve very well as lessons for how responsible people in all worlds might treat portals. Planned, timed openings for contingencies, for backups, if you really need them. An ability to turn this portal off somehow. And, if the portal is on, a way to very quickly and immediately block access. These thoughts must at least be considered for permanent portals to exist in a world, which means that permanent portals necessitate at least some form of social organisation. They imply a world that is socially, culturally, and materially interconnected, with major power brokers in charge of major portals. Portals are also therefore a bit of a double-edged sword. They're part hub of civilization, information and trade, and part nascent weak point with threat of invasion. Portals will shape a world if they stick around, because they force urbanization and the centralizing of power. It's like a trade route on steroids mixed with the massive transfer of materials and manufacturing that characterized the shift in populations to city during the Industrial Age. Your world's social organization becomes about portals if they are persistent. And that's okay. It's just quite hard to have a world that doesn't then focus on efficiency and logistics and how to maximize the power of a portal if that's the case. Personal portaling is the way to go if you don't want your setting to have people's relationships with portals as at least the setting, if not the story too. Which is why personal portaling is a relatively common power, all things considered, across both fantasy and science fiction. It's pretty safe if you don't get into the persistent stuff. But perhaps the most common teleportation, though, surprisingly, is also the least defined. Translocation. It's common because it's so simple. If you want a type of teleportation that doesn't draw focus from the story that you're telling, make your teleporters just appear in a new place. Frankly, both matter transmission and shortcutting to some extent are just methods used predominantly in science fiction to explain what is essentially magical translocation. Stepping through the fourth dimension, wormhole generation, or finding a parallel version of yourself that was standing in the spot you want to be at that moment, and quantum switching. They're all powers and justifications that are developed to justify things that look a lot like translocation, but technically aren't. It's a shame though, because translocation itself can be quite an interesting tool without using a subtype of shortcutting or matter transmission if you want it to be. If not, just have people disappear and reappear in the place they want to be. It's as simple as that. It doesn't take much from your story. But simply disappearing and reappearing wholesale as a person should, in most systems that try to adhere at least to some sort of real-world physics, result in a large displacement of air where you start and where you end up, which should probably create implosions and shock waves respectively. Or you can take the air with you when you teleport and swap that too, which will really only affect things with great pressure differences or heat differences to cause smaller scale phenomena. Even without sticking to physics, translocation can be interesting, from requiring a mental model of your destination to the risks of translocating into solid matter like a wall. The blank slate status of translocation as a power makes it versatile and easy to design problems and limitations that feel reasonable. For example, a range limit on a wormhole feels strange. If your magic can fold space itself, why can't it fold a bit more space, you know? But a range limit of sight or a simple sort of distance-based range limit makes more sense when we're talking about translocators. For instance, the curvature of the Earth might mean that translocators really shouldn't be trying to travel more than a few miles in any direction, just in case they mess up the calculations and find themselves stuck in the ground. Or a little bit too high and breaking their ankles on impact. Stuff like that, even on a flat plane, you know? For whatever reason, translocation does just thematically lend itself to more acceptable, reasonable feeling limitations, which makes it a useful tool in any world in which you want to limit the power of teleportation. Add that to the fact that translocation generally is a personal power, or at least it's something you can do to a small group of people with some cooldown generally. And really you can put this in most worlds, assuming you expect the intelligent and powerful people of your world to try and find any way they can to exploit it. Things like translocators teleporting themselves into the sky and then teleporting again to avoid site-based or range-based limits. Building teleporter traps around the safe locations that translocators tend to go back to, for instance. Or massively overprotecting vaults with masses of redundancies, or moving parts, physically moving parts in a vault to make sure that a translocator can't necessarily get in there safely without being inside a moving wall. It doesn't matter the tech level. Any world that knows that teleporters, or translocators in this case, exist will try and think up some defensive and offensive strategy in wealth protection and war. No world can survive contact with any kind of teleportation unchanged, because people are smart and people in power tend to be paranoid. We shouldn't expect our happy little medieval-ish worlds to keep their systems of trade, information or defence constant in the face of teleportation any more than we should expect them to keep those things constant in the face of dragons. And for science fiction, it feels like the technological implications are often just not elaborated on far enough, not extrapolated on far enough, and often hand-waved away with, well, ethics or other kind of weak justifications for those options not having been explored in serious detail. In Star Trek, for instance, cloning a person via matter transmission is heavily regulated and massively taboo. It's not a done thing. It's only used when you need, say, an organ replacement, and in that case it's just used to build the living tissue of the organ and nothing more. But it helps to remember, rules, regulations, norms and ethics don't stop people universally, or people in extreme situations doing stuff they're not meant to, especially if those people lack moral compunctions anyway. Just a thought for any new technology or magic you choose to introduce to a world. But thank you for watching. I promised you an explanation on why you shouldn't be joining my membership program at the moment, and that is a scheduling thing. In, well, a week and a half from when this video goes out, I'm going to be getting married, which is really exciting for me, and hopefully my fiancée. But we're then off on honeymoon, so there's going to be a stretch of time where I'm not going to be able to make any more videos. I hope you don't miss me too much. And I think I'll miss thinking things through on this sort of level, but it'll also be nice to have a break. So that's why I've been producing fewer videos over the last month, and why I'm producing fewer for the near future, the next month. After that point though, I'm back in the saddle. You're getting, as best as possible, a weekly Monday video from me all the way through till basically the end of the year and beyond, because I'm not running out of topics. You need to understand that there's too much to talk about. So if you're considering supporting me in the YouTube membership sphere, do it when there's a bit more of a benefit, because you get your videos as soon as I'm done editing. You get that exclusive space to chat with me. But again, I'm getting married. It's a busy time. I will hopefully be able to check back in with you in a few months, or in a month, I think. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching. I've been Tom, otherwise known as the Grungeon Master, and I hope to see you in the next video.